Okay. Hi, Justin. How are you?
Hey, Douglas, I'm excellent. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, right off the bat, I got to talk about your podcast. You've got a podcast called the Hidden Gateway Podcast.
Yes, I sure do. I started the Hit Gateway podcast back in December 2020, and it has been a phenomenal ride, phenomenal journey for me. I talk about a little bit of everything. We cover a wide variety of topics. We definitely get into social issues, and we talk about reaching human potential. A little bit of politics here and there. But we also have a spiritual side as well, where we get into spirituality. Now, that's not religion. We do have some conversations regarding religion, but spirituality, paranormal, those type of topics.
Okay, so you started in December 2020. Was this a COVID baby?
Yeah, it sure was. It sure was. Like millions of people, I was sitting at home during the pandemic, and wanted to do something to kind of step out the side of the box, if you will. Something that would not only provide a challenge, but maybe something that I could learn and grow from. And because of my history, the various experiences I had in life, starting a podcast was without doubt one of the most challenging things that I ever journeyed on. And it's still challenging, but yet rewarding. We've been going solid. I host a guest each week. I've been very fortunate to have some amazing guests on my show. Some names like Robert Kennedy Jr., Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA vaccines, but mRNA that goes into the vaccines, excuse me. Chris Voss, Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Christiane Northrup, a lot of great guests, even Tommy Chong chatted with me for a bit. But my goal is to help people, to help bring awareness to people that may not be aware of some of the things that go on in this world. I had a revelation, if you will, several years ago while living in San Diego, where the Spirit spoke to me and said, "Nothing is as it seems." And ever since I heard that, my life took a pivot. And I've been reborn spiritually, if you will, and now I'm doing what I do. It's very good. I've been very blessed.
The podcast was a spiritual calling?
Oh, without doubt,
Yeah?
without
Well,
doubt,
that's cool.
I was led
All
by the
right.
Spirit to do that. During that 2020 lockdown, I started doing a lot of research on spirituality, and I started meditating, and that was really the game changer for me. I started a meditation called the Gateway Experience, and this is a documented meditation that uses binaural beats. It's a guided meditation, I should say, and it's hemisync. So you get a couple different sound waves going into each ear, and it synchronizes the brain. And when that happens, it creates a third sound wave. So it puts you in this really deep, relaxed state of mind and allows you to get into a really heavy, deep, meditative state. And, for me, it's such an experience. I start actually doing astral traveling and having these out of body experiences. And for anyone that's interested in it, you can actually go on the CIA website, CIA.gov, and type in the Gateway Experience, and you'll see how they you see what they did. The documents became unclassified about 10 years ago, but the government knows about it. They used it. They actually weaponized it back in the 80s to spy, do remote viewing on the Russians and Chinese. But you can do different things. The spiritual world, that's a whole other thing. But yeah. Just to circle back to your question, without doubt, to start the podcast I was definitely without doubt led by the Spirit to do so.
Okay, you mentioned Dr. Robert Malone. Was he the one with the controversy on Joe Rogan?
Yes, that is him. Yeah, he
Oh,
was on
wow.
Rogan probably a couple months after he was on my show.
Oh, yeah, okay. And he made some, what was it called? Mass formation psychosis?
I'm not familiar with that. And I didn't watch that Rogan episode, so I'm not sure exactly what was discussed. But I do recall hearing and seeing briefly that he was on the show, and it was a lot behind that. And from what I understand, I know YouTube pulled it, and something else along that matter. Maybe Rogan got some more heat. You know, he's been kind of they've been on this witch hunt with him for some time. So.
Well, it was the whole thing about Neil Young. Neil Young really started the whole thing off.
Oh yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah,
Yes,
and he pulled
yes.
all his music. He said,
Uh-huh.
if Rogan doesn't go, I go. And it was pretty obvious who Spotify was going to take because of the money.
Exactly.
They paid Rogan 200 million, and I
Yep.
think Neil Young at best was pulling in a couple million a year from
Right.
his music. So it just it was a whole big mess. But well, that's cool. I'm glad you had him on, and it sounds like a really interesting podcast. I think I will check it out. I'm always looking for interesting podcasts to listen to, since we're both
Yeah,
kind of doing
yeah.
the same
Check it out,
thing.
Douglas. Maybe something there for you. You never
Yeah.
know.
Just speaking on podcasts, you said it was very challenging. What was the most challenging thing for you?
Well, because of my experiences, and I talk a lot about this in my book, In the Eye of the Father. I went through a lot of trauma and abuse at the hands of my biological father as a child. Right, my father was this Marine guy who was very complex, and he had this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. And he was an alcoholic as well. So two sides to him, right? There was this side that was evil and mean, very abusive, and he literally put my family through hell. But then there was this other side, this nice, this gentle, this caring side, would literally give people the coat off his back, or the shirt off his back, I should say. And because of his controlling ways, and with his mantra of being a child is to be seen and not heard, as I was growing up, that caused me to shut down and not know how to express myself and not know how to communicate, right? Because again, I couldn't talk, I couldn't express myself. He made decisions for me, and he was very, not only physically abusive but psychologically and mentally abusive too, which I say was much worse for myself. So this caused me to grow up kind of a timid kid, even in my teenage years, very shy. Not knowing how to talk, not wanting to speak up for myself, very introverted, if you will. So, when the Spirit spoke and said, I want you to start a podcast, I was like, no, I'm not starting a podcast. I'm not going to put myself out there and, voice my opinion on these matters and have these hosts on and have these guests on rather and be a host. It's like definitely outside of my comfort zone. But there were some pretty dynamic events, life experiences that led up to doing that enabled me to learn how to control fear, right? One thing that I did in August of 2020 was I went skydiving. Now, Douglas, someone had asked me if I
Wow.
went up in a plane and jumped out at 20,000 feet. No way, not having it, not me. That's somebody else. You got the wrong guy. But, I did it. I fought that fear, and that week leading up to my jump, I learned so much about myself. And one of the best things I've learned, the most important things I learned, I should say, is how to control fear. Now, that fear still comes, but knowing how to control it, knowing how to deal with it, knowing how to not let it bully me, but to take control, right? And I learned how to do that. And what I learned after that jump is some of the other fears that I had in my life, they actually went away, and that gave me the strength to overcome that fear to eventually start my podcast in December of 2020. And, one thing that I tell people all the time, the great thing about stepping in front of fear and going through it, not around it or avoiding it, is that the good Father places the very best things in life on the other side of fear. And that's what I've learned in many aspects, many parts of my life since I've been on this magnificent journey of mine.
So let's transition over to your book. You mentioned your book. The title is called In the Eye of the Father, a memoir of faith and redemption. Now, is this book about your father?
No, well, he's definitely in there, especially in the beginning. Well, I should say throughout, but it's not solely about my father. It's about my life, my experiences, me understanding why I had the experiences I did as a child, but not only as a child, throughout my entire life. And that's just the truth of the matter. This is a book that I put my blood, sweat, and tears into. I stand on my truth, and I'd like it to be used as a template, if you will, for anyone that has gone through trauma, that needs healing, because I needed healing. I needed a lot of healing, and I was able to do that through the Spirit, being led by the Spirit. One thing I did that helped a lot last year in April of 21 is I participated in a 3-night ayahuasca ceremony in the desert. And that was definitely very spiritual. And I learned so much about myself and so much about my purpose during that time. The very best way for me to be able to describe that is, I tell people all the time, I literally walked with the Father 3 nights in the desert. And another life-changing experience, which has been beneficial to me. But with my book, In the Eye of the Father, a memoir of faith and redemption, if you look on the back, the very first sentence on the back says, the first step of understanding who we will become comes at the death of who we are. And so that's what I've gone through, is this spiritual first death and then rebirth. And again, I've learned so much about myself, and I document everything in the book. As horrible as some of the things that I went through with my father, and I went through some bad things, everything from being beat for 30 minutes where I had these grapefruit-sized welts and blisters on my body, to having hot boiling oil poured over my head. And this is when I was in 11 years old, in about sixth grade. And again, the verbal assaults, but everything I went through was for a purpose, right? That is my truth. And that's what I know without a doubt. And even though I went through everything with my father, I held no grudges, and I still loved him. And that's the message in the book. We all decide what type of mindset we want to have each and every day, because we are creators. And the key is taking those traumatic events, those traumatic life experiences, and using them to our benefit, and then in return to benefit others. And that's my purpose. That's my journey. And that is all documented in my book. And it goes all the way up till this present day, where I talk about the podcast, I talk about my nonprofit, Tangelic, and it goes deep. So, I believe it's a great read, and I've gotten some excellent feedback on it as well. So again, it's to be used as a template.
Is your father still alive?
No. He transitioned in 2007.
Telling me about the horrific things that you went through as a kid, you came out the other end pretty well, because a lot of kids might have ended up becoming incredibly dysfunctional, for lack of a better word, in society, right? But you didn't.
Right.
And what was it, one particular thing? We've only got a couple of minutes, so if you could make it a shorter answer. What was the one thing that sort of allowed you to forgive him for all of that?
Well, I don't think it was one thing. I just never have had it in my heart to hold any toxic, negative energy towards him. And maybe because I was exposed to another side, that loving side, and that's what I always wanted, 100%, instead of the other side, And I understood him as well. I'm probably one of the very few people that understood him, because he had a lot of traumatic events in his life that he never dealt with. And that is a big reason why my family and I went through what we went through. So, was
he abusive only when he drank?
No. The majority of the time, yes, but no. But no, there were some times where he, like, for example, and I was unaware of this until he brought it to my attention soon before he died. When I was about 2 years old, maybe 1 or 2, he had came in from work, had a bad day, rough day, and I ran up to him and I said, Daddy, open arms. And he picked me up and he threw me down on the ground. And I had forgot about that. But then when he knew he was dying, he apologized to me for that. And when he told me that, I had a vision. That memory came back. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. I saw the whole scene. So that memory was subconsciously locked in the back of my mind somewhere. But when he brought it up, and that apology, when he broke that chain, that barrier that held him back, and apologized so he could move forward before he transitioned, that helped him heal, and that helped me heal as well. So, but for the majority of the time, it was when he was drinking. No, that's your question. Maybe that was a bit long-winded.
Well, that's all right. Well, interesting story. So I would advise people to pick up the book, In the Eyes of the Father. The author is Jesston Williams. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We do have to wind this down. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes, I sure do, Douglas. My website is thehiddengateway.com. You can also find me on all social media platforms, and then my nonprofit organization, Tangelic. That website will be up in about 2 weeks. That's an organization where I help people move past traumatic experiences, and a special work, especially with the homeless population as well.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, it sounds like you've got a full plate.
I do. Yes, I do. Wouldn't want to be doing anything else, though.
Well, Jesston, thanks so much for coming on. It was nice meeting you. Nice talking to you. Best of luck with the book, your podcast, and everything else